Hello, thank you for being in a new video. This time I have the unboxing of the Galaxy A55 5G. Let's get started. This is the successor to the A54. In fact, the entire A50 series has been very successful, one of Samsung's best-selling series. Let's see what it can offer us in this 6th generation. This cell phone was launched in Mexico at a price of $8,999. A considerably attractive price, taking into account all that it brings, especially also taking into account what Samsung had offered me in past years. On the screen, you see the reference price in dollars to give you an idea, although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. Consider also that if you buy it in pre-sale, Samsung gives you the Galaxy Fit 3. I already have a full review of this bracelet available for you to get to know it in more depth. So it is interesting to acquire the combo of cell phone with bracelet, but join me to uncover the box to see what's inside, which apparently will not be much. And the first thing we find is the cell phone, so let's take it out. And the truth is, it feels much more premium than the last generation because of the new aluminum frame. It feels a lot stronger and a lot tougher, although in this case it comes with plastics glued on, so we're going to peel those off as well. So, this metal frame is going to give it a much more premium feel and far superior to all the competitors that offer plastic frames. It seems like Samsung generation after generation is looking for something to get ahead in, although obviously in other things it may lag behind, like all mid-range devices. But let me turn it on while we see what else comes in the box. We find nothing more than a Samsung Care Plus sheet where they give us the promotion to purchase insurance. So, let's see what else comes over here, because on the other side of the box there's a little bit more content as well. And we come across here with this tool which is for removing the SIM card tray. And notice that also inside this little envelope we're going to find the cable that comes from USB-C to USB-C. It's regular length, and obviously, as you notice, the charger is not included. So, you will have to buy separately the Samsung 25-watt charger in case you want to have the maximum possible charge. Although you could also buy power delivery chargers that can offer you the same fast charge, spending less money. After that, we'll find nothing more than the traditional paper slips of a lifetime, and that's it. So, join me now to save all this content and we'll take a look at the cell phone. And that's it. I've got the device set up here so we can take a look at all of its specs. And after that, we'll do a very brief comparison against its little brother, which is already here waiting for you, the Galaxy A54. It has a weight of 213 grams and a thickness of 8.2 millimeters. It's definitely a device that feels a bit heavier compared to other competitors, but that at the same time gives you a feeling of being a more premium device. Generally, high-end devices are a bit heavier, and in the mid-range there is everything, both heavy and very light devices. But of course, in this case, there are things that make this device heavier. It has a new aluminum frame, plus the back cover is made of glass, protected with Gorilla Glass. So these two elements mean that the device can increase in weight, and that's why it maybe doesn't feel as light. The screen is 6.6 inches in its diagonal, with Full HD plus resolution. It's an AMOLED display with 120 Hz protected with Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, so it's got a good level of resistance, and it's also a screen that's definitely going to look good quality. It also comes with stereo sound. In the case of the top speaker, it comes out of the earpiece for calls. And in the case of the bottom speaker, we see a new design, abandoning the grill design that we had in the last generation, as you can see. The front camera is 32 megapixels with f2.2 aperture. Here I have a first impressions picture. First I have a capture before I took the picture, so you can see how it's quite overexposed the background is. But after taking the picture, I think it does an excellent balance of highlights and shadows. We have a good result. I think Samsung always tends to excel at selfies, and this one will be no exception. Although notice that even though I can use the 32 megapixel mode, I feel that the 12 megapixel picture is more detailed. This is the 12 megapixel picture, as you can see here in the details, and notice how it gives us a good level of detail. I would say it's a spectacular photo in that sense. But interestingly, the 32 megapixel photo, notice that it looks more blurry to me. I don't know why. So the best thing to do would be to take the 12 megapixel photos. Fortunately, it is very easy to select the resolution. Here in this part, it offers us this different selector. And to give you a high-end experience, Samsung incorporates its color tones that it normally has in the high-end series. So you choose whether you want more natural colors or warmer colors in your selfies. On the back, we have the 50 megapixel main camera with f1.8 aperture, then the 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera with f2.2 aperture and fixed focus, and finally the 5 megapixel macro camera with f2.4 aperture. The design obviously looks like all the Galaxy, so it looks very attractive in the sense that it looks very much like a Galaxy S24, for example, which would be the high end. And interestingly, with respect to last generation, notice how they've changed the size of these cameras to make them look a little more imposing, although they're basically the same cameras. Here are some examples. This is the picture with the ultra-wide camera that comes out very well, both in detail and in colors and other things. Then we have a picture with the main camera, then with 2x zoom where you can see that it still maintains a very good quality. And finally, the maximum zoom, which is 10x. And it is also seen that it gets to take good advantage of the information of this 50 megapixel sensor. So I like the main camera, although as I say, it does not represent as such a major evolution over the last generation. Now watch. This is a photograph that I took with the main camera using 2x digital zoom, and I think it gets to give me some nice detail. And now this is the photograph that I took with the 5 megapixel macro camera. And I think in both cases we have a very similar level of detail. So I don't know how useful the macro camera is going to be, even though it's 5 megapixels. I feel like there's not really that much difference between the result that it can give us compared against the main camera. For example, in this case, I don't know if you could tell the difference between the main camera and the macro camera. The biggest difference will be the intensity of the blur that is naturally generated in the background and also the color rendering. So the main camera gives us more accurate colors and more aggressive blur, while the macro camera can give us a more uniform focus as well. Notice how in this case all the leaves or all the petals of this flower are in focus, while with the main camera they come out a little out of focus. They give the feeling of being smudged or muddy. So that could be more or less the usefulness of the macro camera in this sense, to have a more even focus. And since it's a 5 megapixel photo, it could be totally superior to what other manufacturers offer us with macro cameras. 2 megapixel. So I'm not disappointed with the photographic system, but if I would have liked to see a little more evolution with respect to the last generation. One good thing is that this cell phone can record video in 4K at 30 frames per second. It even does it with the ultra-wide camera. In fact, it does it with the front camera as well. So in video recording is also a point where the Galaxy usually excels a lot, because most other manufacturers limit you a lot in terms of compatible resolution when recording video. The battery is 5000 milliamps and the charger must be purchased separately. In this sense, there is no evolution either. It is exactly the same capacity with the same maximum charging power. And what bothers obviously is that the charger must be purchased separately. In storage, we have good news. There are versions of 128 or 256 gigabytes, and the 128 version actually came down in price compared to last generation. So that's great news because it's very difficult for devices to come down in price. But in this case, Samsung did. And the 256 gigabyte version is available at a price of 9,999 pesos. On the screen, you see the reference price in dollars, although I already told you that the prices here are not the same as over there. It also has 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's excellent news because being a device that comes with all of Samsung's software, generally it can get to feel a little heavier on devices with 6 gigabytes of RAM. But since this device features 8 gigabytes, I really think it's going to give us a very good experience. It comes with One UI 6.1 and Android 14. So it adds options like modes and routines where you can automate a lot of things on your cell phone. It also adds some security options, battery care options. It has always on display and well, a lot of things that you can enjoy on this device. It should be noted that it does not have the Galaxy AI functions. But anyway, it does have an object eraser that you can take advantage of, so it can become useful in some scenarios. But obviously it's a little less advanced edition than what we see on the Galaxy S24 series. And finally, the processor is the Exynos 1480, the new generation of this Exynos processor that Samsung is developing for its mid-range. So how about we start this comparative round against its little brother, analyzing a benchmark to see if there is an evolution between the Exynos 1380 that has the Galaxy A54 and this Exynos 1480 that the Galaxy A55 integrates. So let's run this benchmark on both devices and come back when we have the final score. On the left side is the last generation, the Galaxy A54, and on the right side is the Galaxy A55, and look at the evolution, looks abysmal. We now have 1,158 points on single core and 3,402 points on multi-core. Honestly, these are very good numbers to talk about a mid-range processor. To give you an idea, more or less, these same numbers gives us the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, which obviously is not such a recent processor, but it's a completely high-end processor. So it's really anticipated that it's going to perform well, especially because it doesn't even feel hot. Unlike this one, which in the last generation has a lower score, and which also feels a lot hotter as I finish this test. So my expectations are being raised with this device. The truth is that the Exynos processor can always generate doubts, but in the review I will tell you specifically the performance it can achieve. So far the impression is very good. So let's take a quick look at the differences between this generation and the last one. The key island is new, the metal frame is new, it now offers us Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, giving us a more resistant screen. We have a new design for the speaker, which will probably also in the internal components will be slightly better. And the processor, as I already told you, is much more powerful in this generation. So it's not a revolutionary upgrade. But it does introduce important improvements to refine the mid-range experience. Obviously, it keeps the waterproof certification, so it's a very attractive device in that regard. But for now, it has been a first look. I hope you liked this video. We'll have the video review later, so you can get to know it in more depth. I hope you liked this one, and if you did, you know you can tell us. See you next time.